Hello and welcome to Reading with Jim Larsen. I am Jim Larsen. I am going to read right now from the September 1979 issue of Country Music Roundup with a picture of Mickey Gilley on the cover. I am going to read an article titled Gentleman Jim, a Portrait of Jim Reeves. It's on page 9. It is written by Wayne Forsythe. Gentleman Jim, a Portrait of Jim Reeves, Part 1. July 31st, 1979 marks 15 years since the death of Jim Reeves in the crash of a private plane near Brentwood, Tennessee. Yet, Jim's records continue to pay contemporary tributes to his smooth velvet style, and the fans still acclaim him to be unequaled. Here is the story of Jim Reeves' life and music, and the inside account of the business built around his name and memory. It is July 31st, 1964. Nashville, Tennessee is steaming under a hot summer sun with threatening thunderstorms greeting Friday afternoon motorists. Rush hour traffic is already beginning to peak as thousands of homebound commuters rush to the freeways. On their radios, the sound of Nashville's own country music fans never had it so good. The Nashville sound is no longer a term used to designate an isolated regional appeal. By now, it is the predominant and most often imitated sound in the recording industry. The number one records across the country are those recorded by Nashville's most sought-after singers and musicians. The music industry is recognized as one of the city's most vital and thriving industries. The car radio, now a constant companion to the city's commuters, give them sports, the weather, and then a top country record by a man who has gained the attention of the entire world since 1957, when Four Walls became a gigantic hit. Jim Reeves is singing one of his songs about lost love. Listeners share in the simple but acute pain one feels when the woman he loves doesn't care anymore. There are no references to drinking the blues away or cheating, just simple lyrics that come across as sincere and genuine. The voice is deep and smooth. The closest analogy being that sensation which comes from running one's fingers over fine velvet, hence the term smooth as velvet, has followed Jim Reeves even until now. Above the city, Jim Reeves is piloting a small private airplane home from a business trip to Arkansas, where he and a friend had gone to look at a piece of investment property. He speaks to the airport control tower, being advised that the only significant weather development is the possibility of scattered thunderstorms, the kind that pop up suddenly in midsummer. The tower advises that Jim's plane is in radar contact. What would have been a routine business trip turned out to stun the country music world. The announcement that was heard over the radio shook the city, and later the country. Mary Reeves, I skipped the paragraph. Details were still sketchy, but a private plane believed to be piloted by Jim Reeves was missing and overdue. Nashville Airport had established radar contact, but then the plane disappeared from the screen. Shortly, a search would be initiated. Mary Reeves, Jim's wife, had played golf in a celebrity tournament that day and had just returned home when she was informed. That telephone call would begin a vigil which would last for 2 days. I was in Connecticut that Friday night when the news came, said Harry Jenkins, an operations manager for RCA Records at that time. Jenkins had been with RCA during Jim's entire career there was a telephone call saying that Jim's plane had apparently gone down near Nashville, but that the wreckage had not been found, Jenkins remembers. It was Sunday before search crews found the crash site. The plane had gone down in some trees, Mary Reeves stated. Only one limb had been broken off a tree and the opening just closed in again, making it impossible to see the wreckage from either the ground or the air, although the crash occurred just a mile from a runway. Sunday's radio and television bulletins flashed across the country. WSM Radio signed off the air in tribute to the man who had already established himself as a country music legend. The governor of Tennessee provided a plane for Jim Reeves to be taken back to his native state for burial. Following a service in Nashville and a second service in his hometown of Carthage, Texas, Jim Reeves was buried in the little East Texas town of 9,000 people where he had grown up. Excuse me. What happened to Jim's music after his death is the rest of the story, an account that has its share of fame and success, but also its share of rumors and distortions and misconceptions as always follow famous people. It doesn't bother me that people still ask questions about Jim Reeves, Mary said in a recent interview. There was Jim Reeves the artist, and there was Jim Reeves my husband. Where was I? As in the lives of all entertainers, the two are separated. They had to be. My husband is gone and has been for almost 15 years, but Jim Reeves, the artist, is still here. In the year following Jim's death, he would become one of the best-selling country music artists in the country. RCA, which produced all of Jim's records since he signed with the company in 1955, carefully surveyed the tapes that Jim had made during his last recording sessions. The last sessions included several single recordings, Mary recalls. Is It Really Over was one of the songs he did. I Won't Come In While He's There and This Is It were also included. Chet Atkins, Jim's producer and then vice president of RCA in Nashville, remembers Jim Reeves' last recording session. It was at the old RCA studio on 16th Avenue, now a part of a tourist attraction sponsored by the Country Music Association. We had a new engineer who had just come in, and he didn't know the studio and the control board too well, and we didn't get a very good sound. Atkins remembers. I remember Jim commenting about that. It was just about a week or so before he died. Under the direction of Chet Atkins, RCA released approximately 2 songs per year from the new unreleased material that Jim had recorded. This practice continued until around 1972, when the new material became scarce. Actually, we had more than this average number of Jim Reeves songs on tape, says Harry Jenkins. There's a picture of Jim holding his ears, by the way. Harry Jenkins, who now works with Mary and the staff of Jim Reeves Enterprises. This is partly because of the increased recording activity for Jim after he hit so big with Four Walls and He'll Have to Go. And also because Jim made so many tapes at home. Chet Atkins agrees. We usually recorded a song with just one try because Jim had a little studio at his house and he found probably 50 or 75% of the songs that we recorded. But Jim would have demo sessions at his house. He would get his boys together in there and he would record the tunes that he was going to do on the RCA sessions. So he would work out a lot of the problems in his own studio. Then he would come into our studio and record them again. That's the reason that Mary Reeves wound up with so much of Jim Reeves' material, because Jim liked to play around in his studio and he would try out songs in there. And maybe they wouldn't sound to suit him, so he didn't release them for RCA. But these were things that Mary has kept. The fans collected every release, wondering how many more new Jim Reeves songs the studio could have stored away. And to those who worked within the business, every Jim Reeves tape was a new treasure. How could they be made to sound contemporary? Did this one need new background music? As a result, a dedicated work on the part of Mary Reeves, who selected material, and engineers who performed tedious technical marvels, Jim Reeves was still a very competitive force in this growing industry. We never promoted or thought of Jim Reeves the artist as being gone. Harry Jenkins said his music was alive and contemporary, and we kept it that way. As a result, there came the speculations that Jim Reeves was not dead. He was really alive, hidden away in a hospital in Australia, according to one widely published report. One publication did an article with a headline which read, "Is Jim Reeves really dead?" Mary says. Under the headline, they answered by saying, "No, he isn't." They couldn't understand how they kept hearing Jim Reeves songs that were fresh and contemporary, so they reasoned that Jim was hidden away someplace and that he only came out to record now and then. "I must admit I was a little furious at first," Mary said, "but I guess there was no real harm done. Anyway, it was a foreign country, and I don't know what's against the law there and what isn't." In reality, the art of preserving and releasing the Jim Reeves recordings had become a tremendous task. Jim had been a man with many friends, and one of the favors he had often performed for his friends was to record their songs for use as demo tapes. That is, demonstration recordings that he would submit to a prospective producer or a recording artist, hoping to persuade them to record the song. One of the best-selling Jim Reeves songs came to us from this way. Mary Reeves remembers the story behind Jim's recording of Distant Drums. Roy Orbison did a really good version of that too, by the way. Cindy Walker, one of my favorite singers these days, she wrote and sang "You Don't Know Me," one of my favorite songs. Okay, Cindy Walker wrote the song especially for Jim because that's the way she writes. For a particular artist, she brought the song to Jim in the fall of 1963, and Jim liked it. It was Chet Atkins, I recall, who didn't feel that the song was right for Jim to release at that time. He just didn't think that the song was all that timely, and even though Jim liked the song and thought it had potential, he respected Chet's opinion. Cindy asked him to make one recording just for her, believing that it had been placed in his publishing company, and because he loved Cindy, Jim honored her request and made a demo recording of the song, not intending it to be released. It was kind of filed away. I kept a copy and sent the other to Cindy. Later, because of the Vietnam War, troops were being called up by the thousands. What had not been considered a timely song in 1963, upon release in 1966, on the mind of nearly every young American boy and the girl he loved. The lyrics of Distant Drums were almost prophetic. "I hear the sound of distant drums, far, far away, and if they call for me to come, then I must go, and you must stay." The release earned Jim a spot on the top of American charts, not just in country music polls, but in traditional pop charts as well. In early 1966, Distant Drums hit the Billboard chart. Mary recalled as she walked through the second floor showroom of Jim Reeves Enterprise in Madison, Tennessee, where Jim's awards are displayed. Then in October 1966, things began to happen in England. Mary went on, pointing to a British chart which listed the country's top 50 records. The listing of hit records in Great Britain boasted such names as the Four Seasons, the Rolling Stones, the Seekers, and the Beatles, all occupying honors in their native country's music chart. There were American performers who earned positions on the British top 50 by exhibiting strong sales achievements. Names such as Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley stood out, but the number one record on the British top 50 chart was neither by a British singer nor was it rock and roll. Jim Reeves' recording of Distant Drums held the number one spot for 6 consecutive weeks in England. And it says on the bottom here, continued in next issue. Who's been reading with Jim Larsen? Yeah.